Former Atlanta Falcons offensive tackle Elijah Wilkinson took to social media and delivered a verdict that has sent shockwaves across the entire NFL landscape. This was not vague frustration. This was not anonymous sourcing. This was a former professional football player, someone who wore that uniform and walked those halls, attaching his name to a direct accusation against head coach Kevin Stefanski, and specifically naming Shedeur Sanders as the player who got done dirty under his watch. Wilkinson described the situation with Stefanski as a full-on clown show and made it explicitly clear that he wanted absolutely no part of whatever direction the Atlanta Falcons are heading under this coaching staff. When a player with first-hand experience inside that organization speaks up that loudly and that publicly, the football world has no choice but to pay attention. Wilkinson was not being emotional when he made those comments, he was being precise. He was delivering information based on what he had witnessed and what he understood about Kevin Stefanski's coaching style and decision-making. The exchange that followed on social media only amplified the story further. One fan fired back at Wilkinson saying, "Have fun being trash next year," and without hesitation, Wilkinson replied, "This just turned very ugly." Very ugly. That response was not a deflection. It was a confirmation. A man with nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking out publicly chose to do so anyway, and that carries significant weight when evaluating exactly what has been happening inside the Falcons organization since Stefanski arrived. What Wilkinson exposed was not isolated frustration, it was a pattern, and that pattern begins in Cleveland. To understand the full gravity of Wilkinson's accusations, you have to start with Kevin Stefanski's record in Cleveland, because the numbers there are damaging and impossible to dismiss. Stefanski received the worst coaching grade of any head coach in the entire NFL last season. Not second to last. Not bottom 5. Dead last in the entire league. That is not a bad stretch. That is a comprehensive evaluation of a coach who, by every available professional metric, failed at the highest level. His tenure in Cleveland ended not with a quiet exit but with a slow-motion organizational collapse that became one of the most discussed coaching failures across the league. Players were frustrated. The team underperformed relative to its talent. And the quarterback room, which should have been a source of stability and development, became the most visible symbol of everything that was going wrong. At the center of that quarterback chaos was Shedeur Sanders, a young signal caller who entered the NFL with elite college production, exceptional football instincts, and the kind of natural arm talent that cannot be manufactured through any development program. The son of Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, Shedeur arrived carrying both extraordinary expectations and a target on his back, and what Stefanski did with that situation, according to former players and league sources, was consistently work against Shedeur's development rather than in support of it. Reports from inside the Cleveland organization described a coaching staff that refused to give Shedeur Sanders the consistent repetitions he required to establish rhythm and grow as an NFL starter. There were moments in competitive, winnable games where Shedeur was pulled at exactly the wrong time, decisions that had no clear football logic behind them unless winning was not the primary objective. Players noticed. Fans noticed. And now, a former Falcon is telling the entire world that people from outside Cleveland noticed too. The accusations are not fringe commentary from bitter fans. They are coming from inside the professional football ecosystem, from a man who played the game at the highest level and watched what unfolded with Shedeur Sanders closely enough to call it a betrayal. That word, betrayal, is not accidental. It implies a specific kind of broken trust. It suggests that Shedeur was placed in a system where he was told he would be developed, supported, and given a genuine opportunity, and then systematically denied each of those things when it mattered most. Shedeur Sanders came out of Colorado as one of the most compelling quarterback prospects of his draft class. His college numbers were extraordinary, his ability to read defenses and extend plays was well documented, and his leadership qualities were consistently praised by teammates and analysts alike. What he needed, like every young quarterback entering the NFL, was structure, consistency, and a coaching staff genuinely invested in his growth. Instead, what he got in Cleveland under Stefanski was an environment defined by instability, shifting narratives, and decisions that undermined his ability to establish himself. The damage done to his momentum during that period is not something that simply evaporates. It required Shedeur to fight back against a media and organizational narrative that was, by multiple accounts, unfairly and suspiciously hostile toward him from the beginning. The fact that Shedeur Sanders came out of that situation with his professional reputation still intact is a reflection of his own resilience, not of anything Kevin Stefanski contributed. And that is precisely what makes Wilkinson's public statement so significant, because it confirms that what many people suspected about Stefanski's handling of Sanders in Cleveland was not conspiracy theory or fan speculation. It was the observable reality of a coaching relationship that failed a talented young quarterback at a critical moment in his career development. A young black quarterback with everything to prove was, by the account of someone who was in that league and paying close attention, set up to fail by the very coach who was supposed to accelerate his career. When Cleveland moved on from Kevin Stefanski, the expectation in most professional circles was that he would take time away from head coaching, perhaps return as a coordinator, rebuild his reputation, and demonstrate that he could learn from what went wrong. That is not what happened. Stefanski walked directly into the Atlanta Falcons head coaching position with a full roster, a talented young quarterback already in place in Michael Penix Jr., and apparently, based on every early signal, the exact same coaching philosophy that produced the NFL's worst coaching grade in Cleveland. One of the first significant statements Stefanski made as Falcons head coach was declaring an open quarterback competition. General Manager Terry Fontenot publicly backed that position, stating that no starting positions would be handed out in February or March and that everyone on the roster would compete, including newly added Tua Tagovailoa and incumbent Michael Penix Jr. On the surface, language about competition and open battles for starting roles sounds like a fair and merit-based approach. But when viewed through the specific lens of what Stefanski did in Cleveland with Shedeur Sanders, that same language carries a very different meaning. It sounds less like opportunity and more like the beginning of a structured quarterback controversy designed to keep every player in that room unsettled, off balance, and ultimately dependent on Stefanski as the authority figure deciding who plays and who does not. Michael Penix Jr. was a 2024 first-round pick. He was selected with significant organizational investment and the expectation that he would be developed into Atlanta's franchise quarterback. To have that path suddenly clouded by an open competition before a single training camp snap has been taken is exactly the kind of early instability that derailed Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland, and multiple people around the league are already drawing that comparison directly. Wilkinson's public statements were not just a reaction to what happened in Cleveland, they were a warning about what he already sees beginning to take shape in Atlanta. The addition of Tua Tagovailoa to this situation adds another layer of complexity that benefits no one in that quarterback room except the coach running the competition. Tua arrives with his own significant injury history, unresolved health questions, and a career that has been defined as much by time missed as by performances delivered. Placing him inside a three-man quarterback competition alongside Penix and others does not create a clear, productive pathway to winning football. It creates a media narrative that will dominate Falcons coverage for months, distract from actual team building, and give Stefanski an almost endless supply of storylines to manage while deflecting accountability for the team's performance on the field. This is the same mechanism that played out in Cleveland. Rather than committing to Shedeur Sanders and building an offense that maximized his specific strengths, Stefanski presided over a quarterback environment that kept things perpetually unsettled and unclear. The result was the NFL's worst coaching grade, a broken locker room, and a franchise quarterback whose development was interrupted at the worst possible time. Atlanta now appears to be following the same script, and the players who are paying attention, including former teammates already willing to speak publicly, are raising alarms before the first regular season game has even been scheduled. The broader pattern here is what makes Elijah Wilkinson's public statement so important to the ongoing conversation about Kevin Stefanski as an NFL head coach. This is not one bad season. This is not a single controversial decision that can be explained away by circumstances or injuries or bad luck. Multiple analysts graded Stefanski's tenure in Cleveland as a D or an F, citing a losing record, a mishandled quarterback situation, poor utilization of available talent, and a consistent failure to adjust or adapt under pressure. Those grades did not emerge from bias or personal grievance, they came from professional evaluations of what happened on the field and inside that organization over an extended period of time. Wherever Kevin Stefanski has operated as a decision-maker, the pattern repeats. Locker rooms fracture. Stars become frustrated. Young quarterbacks with significant potential find themselves buried under manufactured controversy and inconsistent support. And the teams that believed they were getting a proven solution to their organizational problems end up with a deeper and more complicated set of issues than the ones they started with. Cleveland learned that through direct experience. Atlanta has been warned, loudly, publicly, and by someone with first-hand proximity to the situation, that the same process is already beginning. Elijah Wilkinson did not speak out because it was comfortable or professionally advantageous to do so. Former players who go public with criticism of active coaching staffs understand the social and professional costs of making those statements. He spoke out because the truth about Kevin Stefanski's approach to building, or more accurately, failing to build, winning football teams has been visible for long enough that staying silent felt like its own kind of failure. The Atlanta Falcons have genuine talent on their roster. They have a fan base that has invested emotionally and financially in this franchise for decades. They have players who showed up expecting a legitimate opportunity to compete for a championship. What they have instead, if the early signals are accurate, is a head coach whose documented history suggests he is more likely to undermine that talent than develop it. Shedeur Sanders deserved better than what he received in Cleveland, and the record of his time there, the pulled appearances, the inconsistent support, the media narrative that worked against him, belongs entirely to Kevin Stefanski's coaching legacy. Shedeur survived that environment because his talent and mental toughness are real, not because the system he was placed in gave him any advantage. He has moved forward. But the story of what happened to him under Stefanski has not ended, it has simply relocated to Atlanta, where a new set of players are now living inside the same coaching philosophy that produced one of the most criticized seasons in recent NFL history. The NFL is watching Atlanta closely this season, and not only because of the talent assembled on that roster. The league is watching because Kevin Stefanski's arrival there, combined with the immediate quarterback controversy, the public criticism from former players, and the documented coaching record from Cleveland, has created a situation that demands accountability. If you have been following this story, if you believe that Shedeur Sanders deserved better and that the players speaking up about Stefanski's pattern deserve to be heard, then make sure you hit that like button right now. It helps this channel bring you the stories that the mainstream coverage is not prioritizing. Subscribe so you do not miss a single update as this Falcons season unfolds, because based on everything happening right now, this story is going to get significantly bigger before it gets resolved. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Kevin Stefanski lasts the full season in Atlanta? The conversation is just getting started.